What's happening, Andy? Here I am joined today by Andre of RISO. How are you, Andre? What's happening?
I'm very well. Good to see you again, Andy. It's our first time in 2025, I believe.
It is our first time in 2025. I always like catching up with you at the beginning of the year because you are always on your way back and forth to Europe to attend some of those big time print shows. I think last year we did it right after Drupa,
hmm
and you are fresh off the plane. I mean, fresh off the plane from the Hunkler conference. Where was that? Germany, right?
So Hunkler takes place in Lucerne, Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, they speak German, and God knows we had enough schnitzel out there to prove that. But yeah, no, that was a great show. Finished late last week, and a lot of interesting products there. Ricoh, Canon, HP, Kodak, all had super big booths, a lot of big units there, and of course, a lot of Hunkler equipment. For those of you who don't know what Hunkler does, you really should check it out. It's an impressive array of products, but lots of Bluecrest was there, lots of finishing equipment. Very good show.
And this is that one annual? I forget. Is
It's every 2 years,
every
so
two
it's kind of
years.
like the Olympics, where they have Drupa every five, I think, and this is kind of every two. So
Okay.
it's supposed to be an in between. This year, COVID kind of messed things up, where we had Drupa about 8, 9 months ago, and here we are, less than a year later. We have Hunkler. So it was a bit of a short timeline. Otherwise, we probably would have seen more people from the U.S. It's very well attended by the U.S. this year. Not as many, but it still gave us a chance to show off a lot of stuff.
That's surprising because it's a world-renowned production show that apparently I don't know where it's located, but other than that, I know it's in Europe, right? And it's big iron. I mean, it's the future of what's coming in production, and it's a growing area of our industry, as you know, which is why you're on our show today. We wanted to catch up
Yeah.
and anything.
Actually, your name came up at Hunkler.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because it was actually some of my RISO colleagues in Italy. Ciao, Andrea, by the way. They watch you in Europe. At least some of the people I was speaking to, and they said, "Where do you get those interesting hats? The What's Happening hats?" And so, two of my Italian colleagues, the fellow who runs RISO Italia, along with the production salesperson, said, "Do you have any extra caps?" So I had to dig into my own personal stash, and I brought them two of the What's Happening hats, the white one like you have there, and the latest one you gave me, the green colored
The
one,
camo, yes.
the camera. So I had to give that up. So
Oh
next time you see
no.
me, you replace that. But yeah, no, they say they watch your episodes, the ones that they're most interested in that pertain to some of the hardware they compete against. So you're a name in Europe as well.
Well, thank you very much, and buongiorno to my friends overseas. And if you want me to come bring you a hat, I am happy to do it. So,
So
always good to hear.
bonjour would appeal to my friends at Riso France,
Yes, bonjour.
and buongiorno would appeal to my friends at Riso Italia.
Italiano, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that is always awesome to hear. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Let's get into, last year before we start talking about going forward in 2024 and some of the big news that you've got. Give me a couple of highlights from last year. What were some of the things that you guys achieved that you were really happy about?
Last year was a year where the economy really came into play, and the economy's been building now, the post-COVID economy, which, whether we like it or not, really is a different economy from what it was prior to COVID. And last year we saw price hikes in postage, labor continued to go up. Our industry is not a young industry. And if you want to hang on to the people who run your presses, the people who, your graphic designers, you have to pay them. And so labor costs went up. And of course, paper, which started during COVID and continued with the consolidation. So that whole factor of postage, paper, and labor really put, economic pressure on these production operations, and selling production, especially inkjet production, really is a business conversation. And of course, I'm talking here now to dealers and dealer salespeople. Sure, copy quality and cost per copy, that always factors in. But this sale really is a business conversation about how the technology has now become a cost cutting tool for many of these print organizations. It is a much needed tool that allows them to cut back costs on certain types of jobs. For others, it's a big revenue generator in that it goes out and takes that black and white crowd and allows them to convert them to color, where these people would say, oh, no, 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 I can't afford color. Color toner is too expensive. I'm going from a penny a page to, 4, 5, 6 cents a page. Well, retail, it's more like 10 to 15 cents a page. It's like a, 4 to 800% increase to get jobs done in color. So Inkjet allows that production house to address their black and white audience and say, we have a technology now that can get you into color affordably. So that's been happening with Inkjet, forever, but it really, really year after year, it becomes a bigger piece of it. And 2024 was, we really saw it come to the forefront.
Well, I don't know if it's just me going crazy, but I feel like over the last year or two, it seems like more dealers are picking up production and growing into that space. And the ones that were already in that space are just becoming really proficient at it, carrying multiple brands, and they're starting to really make some good money. And it's when they get it going right, it seems to be much more profitable than what's happening in the office. What are you seeing?
Well, when I look at, I attend a lot of the dealer conferences and I see the conversations going on, and there's a lot of talk about AI and a lot of talk about, managed print services and a lot of stuff like that. And dealers, some of them are making massive amounts of investment looking to diversify. And I get it, that's needed. But it's big money and it's risky. And production inkjet is just, an offshoot of production in general. So production is, you're selling into office. Production is the next step, and from production into production inkjet. There again, it's a natural next step. So it's not a reach. It's not a huge investment. In many cases, you can either use certainly the same sales manager, potentially the same salespeople, possibly the same technician. One of your top MFP technicians can certainly latch on to some of the production devices and inkjet. So it's just a natural progression, and it doesn't cost all that much, but it's a refocus. And as much as people use the word refocus very loosey goosey, it is tough to refocus, and that's some of the challenges dealers have.
I would agree with that. It's expanding in a new area. It's first of all you have to make that decision, and that's probably painful to begin with. But once you finally do, you've got to start dumping money into it to get it going, to get it off the ground. I agree with some inkjet companies, and you're one of them. It is not a stretch if you're already in production, if you already have techs that are sophisticated enough to service some of this high-end stuff. We've seen companies have tons of success. You are one of them. You've been growing. You've added dealers. You've moved upstream to a product that's what, 320 pages a minute?
Correct, correct.
And so,
Um,
when
Go
you get
ahead.
into that production area and you start adding finishing onto it, and by the way, that one was, didn't you tell me it was a quarter of what comparable speed? I mean, it's maybe not exactly in the same class, but it's sort of an in between some of this laser and the super high-end inkjet. And then, by the way, I'm going to guess that almost
You
everything you
listen.
saw, Hunkler, everything you saw was inkjet, right?
Pretty much, yes, yes. And I'm very impressed, by the way. You listen when I speak. That's very good. You remember our past conversations.
Well, I did this before, and it's always been impressed upon me, no pun intended, that this was a product that if I had had when I was in sales, I would have loved to pitch it just because A, it's unique. There's no head-to-head competitor with it. Although you can drop it into situations where it's going to compete against laser, or even possibly other inkjets, there are advantages to it and disadvantages to it. But if you're a good salesperson, you could be the last one standing there real easily, I would think. There's just nothing else that goes head to head with, especially with that I'm going to say it wrong, but the Valsus?
The Valuses, yes. Listen,
Valusus.
everything has advantages and disadvantages. Everything has limitations. Everything is a complement. And inkjet is part of the puzzle, right? You've got offset. you've got black and white toner, you've got color toner, and now you've got inkjet, right? It's all part of a puzzle that print shops have to use strategically to fill in gaps. The color toner device, while it makes beautiful graphic quality images, was never really supposed to be the answer for spot color.
And it's
And
expensive.
yet it is used for spot color, a technology that is 4 to 6 cents a page,
Yep.
designed to print, ledger size, full bleeds. Graphic is also the same device you use to print manuals and in some cases envelopes and in some cases transactional invoices and statements. That was never the intended use of that type of technology. So along comes inkjet that says this is the device for your spot color work. This is the device for those disposable copies. That's what transactional is. Items that are used, that are printed, used, and discarded, maybe into a filing cabinet, as is the case with a booklet or manual, or child's student's homework, exams. Sure, you may hang on to them, put them in a box somewhere, but they have a very short lifespan. And printing color on those documents with a short lifespan can be extremely painful and expensive for organizations who are converting from black to color. And that's where inkjet comes in. It is very much a complement and, like I said, a piece of the puzzle.
Well, the technology has just improved. Every single generation has gotten better. I remember back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, these products were, it was good enough color. It was the way you kind of marketed it. And it was really more of a newspapery thing. And it was just for people who wanted super inexpensive and affordable. But now, over the last few years, your color, especially depending on what they're printing on and what colors they're printing, you guys have some advantages in some of the color I've seen.
Well, it's come a long way. And in fact, 2025 marks 20 years of RISO in the production cut sheet inkjet arena. We were the first to market cut sheet inkjet. Remember, roll fed has been around longer than that.
Mhm.
But cut sheet we launched, RISO did in 2005. And as is the case with many first generation products, I have to admit it was a little clunky back in 2005, not as slick and as streamlined as it is today, 20
Yeah, but
years
it
later.
worked. It was still the best thing in its class.
Sure.
It did
Yeah.
what it was supposed to do.
Yeah. But as is the case with anything RISO, if you remember back in the days of the duplicator, where we said, you have your black and white copier, you've got your toner color copier, and here's a duplicator that will capture all those in between jobs, the 30 to 200, 300, that type of segment. And everybody said, well, there is no in between. Well, as is life at RISO, we had to take a shovel and pave a path. And we did. And we put out like 100,000 duplicators between, gosh, 1990 and 2000. There was definitely a market that
Yeah.
Rico was in it and
Yeah.
Duplo was
My
in it
my
and
dealership
Standard was
sold
in it.
it. My dealership sold duplicators. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what Resell does. We were very good at finding that niche, finding the gaps in the industry and filling those gaps. We did it with the duplicator. Today we're doing it with inkjet. That's why I mentioned duplicator very much as a compliment. But yeah, 20 years.
Yep.
So this is 2005 is our 20-year anniversary, and it's a technology where we stuck to what made us great, which was an oil-based ink. So we kind of took what we learned from the duplicator, transitioned to inkjet, maintained an oil-based ink because it is instant dry, so we don't need a dryer, don't need a decurler. That makes for a much smaller footprint. As a standalone, the unit is 5 feet. Fully loaded, our balances is it's like 16 feet. Our competitors are 25, 30, 35 feet. So that's why so many customers today are RISO customers that are replacing some of the larger production devices they have. Rather than spending $1 million, will buy 2 or 3 balances for 750,000. You're a lot more flexible. You have what print shops love, which is redundancy.
Redundancy.
Love, or that every print shop manager goes to bed at night knowing they have redundancy should
Knowing they can
something
get
go
their
wrong
jobs
for
done if
them.
something goes down.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So they have that. That's why they buy two, three, four, five. I think our largest account has about a dozen resos in one building lined up in a row. But we have accounts of like almost 30 resos spread out over multiple locations. So it's a technology that lends itself again to filling that gap, being the complement, whether you need one or whether you need 5, 10, 15 of these devices. The pricing, the economy, back to the economy, the way it is today, it just makes a lot more sense. What with the short runs that we have, the pressures that I mentioned earlier that come from paper, postage, and labor has led the print buyer to say, well, if you are going to increase prices in that manner, Mr. or Miss Print Shop, then I will have no choice but to give you less work, right? Our budget, our print budget can only go so far. So rather than me giving you 1,000,000 copies, I'm just going to give you 500,000. So it really is a situation where these print shops are having to deal with many more jobs, not necessarily more volume, just double the amount of jobs because everything is short run. And in a short run world, you need a lot more light production units compared to just the one big giant.
Absolutely, especially if you've got multiple, if you've got to get multiple jobs out, that just speeds things right up, right? I mean, you can get
Yep.
jobs done two or three at a time in that case versus just one at a time. And at that speed, there's really I don't know if anything else goes that speed that I can think of. I mean, the other legit high-end inkjet printers that I know of, they're fast. They're in the hundreds in many cases, but
Right.
they're not 300 pages a minute. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
And
so
the evolution of inkjet was interesting in that we started this in 2005.
yeah.
Honestly, it wasn't until 2016, 17, end of 16, beginning of 17, when both Canon and Xerox, almost 6 weeks apart, if I remember, launched production cut sheet inkjet. They had moved from their traditional roll to roll to now cut sheet. And when that happened in 16, 17, it really shined a spotlight on cut sheet inkjet in a manner that really helped us because
Oh yeah.
we're the little kid on the block.
Well, it
Along
legitimizes
comes
you, right?
it did. It legitimized us and it added credibility to that space.
Mhm.
And so you had Canon and Xerox launching into it, followed, by Konica Minolta and then Ricoh. Today you've got Kyocera in there as well. So it's not who has production inkjet anymore because pretty much everybody does.
Yep.
Um, so it's come a long way. But we continue to be the only oil-based product out there. So for those customers printing transactional documents that don't want to overspend, over the past 20 years, we put I think we put just in the production arena alone over 5,000 production inkjet devices out in those 20 years. We are the the top selling production inkjet device out there, right? I get it. We're smaller dollar amount, and so that's why we have so many. But in terms of placements, as I mentioned earlier, so many of our customers have multiple units. So we've got a lot of engines out there, given the size of the device and the lower price, really makes for a nice fit there.
Well, you guys have you've certainly carved out a niche there and you've owned it. Before I let you go, what are we looking forward to in the next few months? What's coming down the pike from RISO?
So we've got some interesting accessories. We're getting into the booklet market in a big way. Booklets are such that, again, typically black and white. You think of a technician that takes a course, an operator of a product that may need training. Anybody who goes into a training course needs a manual. Anybody who is learning education market, right, needs a manual, a booklet. And so this is expected to grow like 22% over the next 10 years. This market is. And most of these booklets are printed in black and white. Why is that? Because again, this is a transactional document,
Funny.
something that will end up in a filing cabinet somewhere after that 1 week, 1 month, or 6 month course is over. It's done. You take that book and you use that as reference material at some point in the future. They're typically black and white, but in a color world, a black and white booklet just does not engage as well as color does, especially in the kindergarten to seventh grade segment of the education market. It's been proven, COVID helped prove that young kids cannot learn online. They have to learn on paper. And in a world filled with color, you can't be handing them black and white documents. And
And
so
thank you.
we
Well,
are
thank you,
launching.
Xerox, too, for that research for all those years that talked about how much people learn better in color. They have, research they've done on this that shows that, side by side, black people retain more when you can make your points and have things pop out that are more important. And I mean, if it's in black and white versus color, you in theory, you're gonna help educate the children better using the color.
Yep,
I mean,
yep. And these booklets we've lined up. We've launched SDD, the SDD device at RISO. Soon we'll be launching into Plockmatic as well. And both technologies produce. Now it's not good enough to do saddle stitch anymore because let's face it, saddle stitch kind of gives you that round oval finish where the staples are on the backing of that booklet. So now we have square fold booklets. And gosh, these things, I mean, they look
yeah,
like perfect bound
yeah.
books. They're beautiful. It's still stapled. They are nice and square. You can do anywhere from 20, 30, 40, 50 sheets. And like 50 sheets is like a 200-page booklet in color, right? And most of these booklets are in large part spot color. So if you are in the dealer community and you're selling into the school district print shop, college, university, charter schools, private schools, these are invaluable. The ability for them to print books that are affordable, that are in color, off of a small engine like Friso attached to an SDD or a Plockmatic. That's where we're really looking at expanding our market in 2025. Again, uh, um, jumping on the bandwagon of the 20th year anniversary that is RISO. So we're really looking forward to 2025. Hopefully the economy calms down a bit, but it doesn't look like it's going to. In fact, I think tariffs are going to probably drive up the cost of petroleum, which in turn drives up the cost of shipping and
Everything,
delivery because you have to put gas right in those
everything.
trucks. And so these print shops are going to take an even greater hit. So higher prices was not a fad. Higher prices are here to stay and they're just going to keep getting higher. And so a technology that lends itself to a lower cost, like inkjet, is something that is here to stay as well. And the quicker you, as a salesperson, if you are in sales, catch on to this and use it to your advantage, the better off you'll be.
Well, I know dealers that have picked up, Production Inkjet are in some cases doing really well. It was at a Visual Edge conference. They had, one of your competitors there talking about
Mm-hmm.
how many dozens and dozens of these big time machines. And one of the biggest things they wanted to know from the VP up there talking was, not about the numbers, not about any, they wanted to know when the next one was coming because it was supposed to be coming soon. So they're excited about it. Once they get a taste for, how easy this is to sell. Just because customers have been buying laser for years and years and years, and you're finally able to go in and offer them an alternative technology that has benefits well beyond what their and capabilities way better, well beyond what they have with laser. There's just shortcomings that inkjet, the speed, the affordability, and then on from there. It's a great story. So, I encourage customers who aren't dealers who aren't carrying inkjet, aren't working with RISO or their other vendors. It's a technology that's it sells itself in some places. It's environmental. I mean, on and on, right?
Well, it's not that different from the toner industry. We have dealers that have both the Kyocera and the Riso,
Yeah.
and they have certain customers where the Riso is a better fit. They have certain customers where Kyocera is a better fit, just
Yep.
like you do with their toner devices where they have two or three vendors. That's what it's evolving to, right? So to have one line of toner devices kind of doesn't make sense. And if you still only have one line of inkjet devices, you're kind of shortchanging yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think any dealer who wants to play in production, if you want to be considered a credible production shop, Inkjet should be in your portfolio, whether it's from you guys or it just needs to be there at this point.
Hmm.
That's what customers want.
Yeah.
That's what you saw at Hunkler. That's what you saw at Drupa. That's what we see at the Printing United show. Almost called it on demand. How am I aging myself here?
Yeah, Printing United's coming up in I think it's September, and it's in Orlando this year.
Yep.
We typically do very well. So far, the event was what in September in Las Vegas. I think we're up to about 60 sales that we've delivered from that show. Our year end finishes March 31st, so we're tracking this very carefully because the people who put the bill, our headquarters in Japan, always like to know if they're getting their return on investment, and
They want the
and we do
ROI.
in droves. Oh yeah, yeah,
So you would
yeah.
do that show. You're going to keep doing that show. It sounds like you had a really successful show there.
We are going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep doing industry analysts because a lot of the people we speak to in this industry watch what you have to say in some of these interviews, and there's always good knowledge in there for them. So we know who the key players and key events in this industry are. You're certainly one of them.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for those comments. I will be sending you more hats, obviously. You just earned
We'll
them.
have to send some to Europe, right? I've got
Yes,
French and
I'll bring
Italian
them to
people.
Europe. I will bring them to Europe. How about that? That's a deal for them.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you learned on your trip. I know you must be exhausted. You said you got in last night. Any
Yeah.
last shout outs to anyone before I let you go?
No, you always do that with the shout outs.
I
That's
like this
good.
in case you have a
Good to do.
goodbye or you want one last message.
Right. No, I can't help but stress, as is the case, every time you ask me that question, I think immediately of the dealers. Please get involved with Production Inkjet. RISO is a great product. To have a product this small, this affordable for any print shop is great complement to your fleet of toner devices. You know where to reach us.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. This was great. And anybody who wants to learn a little bit more about the RISO product line, get in touch with me or directly to Andre. I'll put you in touch with him if you don't have his contact information. But Andre, thank you so much. Have a great week. It was great to see you, and I look forward to seeing you at one of the shows coming up soon.
Very good. See you, Andy. Thank
Take
you.
care.